Whenever I cry, or say cry in front of people if I do breath work or whatever, right? I never wipe my tears because for me, wiping your tears shows that you're trying to hide the emotion, which means you're running from a feeling or emotion. And the whole point of crying is you're processing a feeling. So if I cry, I almost want everyone to see that I'm crying, right?
I remember when I was a child, I really liked to express myself, like being a model, acting, singing, dancing. And somewhere along the line that got blocked. And I started regaining my voice in my creative expression a few years ago. So I've been recently just exploring that again and posting them on social media. It was a type of expression that I hadn't shared before, but it was coming from a really authentic place of expressing myself.
I saw this person with rings on his hand and I said, I am observing that you've got rings on your hand and that you might have gone to medicine and you have a earring and a nose septum piercing, which is uncommon for guys to have. And then he said, I don't like the fact that you were judging me based on my materialistic traits. So what he was saying is that he wants people to get to know him as a human, as a person, and not judge him based on what they see.
And I just couldn't sing because my voice got really blocked because of the emotion that I had. The protest brought up these emotions in me that were like this grief and sadness, just having to protest in a foreign country for the freedom of my own country. And I cried in front of people, and I kind of like, that was the most that I hadn't had before. So now when I sing in front of people, I feel like I don't have anything else to lose.
So when I was younger and I wasn't working, I used to just spend all my time at home making stupid videos. So I would go out and sit with cows in the field and I would do videos with them talking as if I was their friend and I'd talk back in their voice and I'd make a little scene out of it. And if I came across a squirrel, then I'd make a performance out of that. And then I'd used to watch myself back over and over and over and over again. And I used to become my own amusement. It then didn't become about the reaction I got from someone else when I published it. I became so happy and content and fulfilled and at watching myself saying how fucking funny I am. Whether or not I'm funny to someone else was besides the point. I was making my own self amused by watching how much nonsense was coming out of my mouth, to the point where I realized it's about what makes us feel the best. It's not about what anyone else thinks. It's how do you feel in this moment, and what can you do to feel that good? And then I went off into this world of doing normal shit. I got a job for the first time, and my energy dropped, and I lost that fun side to me. And only recently have I been looking after dogs, my sister's puppy and the neighbor's puppy. And I started doing recordings of them and just talking utter nonsense. And then I watched myself back and I realized how much fun I used to have 7 years ago. And the point is that we should never lose the things that make us feel the best. We grow up, but that inner child must always be present at all times because that is really what grounds us. And it's only when you have time away from doing those things that make you feel great that only when you come back to it do you remember how great those things used to make you feel.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. And I've recently been exploring this type of expression as well. Because I remember when I was a child, I really liked to express myself, like being a model, acting, singing, dancing. And somewhere along the line that got blocked. And I started regaining my voice in my creative expression a few years ago. So I've been recently just exploring that again, and I record myself and posted them on social media, and it created like a grave revolting for a lot of people because it was a type of expression that I hadn't shared before, but it was coming from a really authentic place of expressing myself and really enjoying that.
Yeah, and I also used to post stuff where I would seek a reaction, and then deep down I'd be like, oh, didn't really get much. Fuck it, I'm not going to do it. And I realized, no, it's not about that. You are present, doing what makes you feel good, and if the rest of the world can also enjoy it, great. That's what it's about. Not I'm only doing this for the attention of others. It comes down to, would you do this anyway without the reaction or anybody else seeing it? And if the answer is yes, then you can only win, and the other people watching can only win. Everything these days is now about money or reaction, and it's never just about doing it for the sake of it. And you're classed as arrogant, or your ego's too big, or why are you laughing at yourself? Only you're laughing at yourself. And when I hear that type of thing, what comes to me is that the other person is simply unhappy with themselves, and they wish that they could have as much fun as, say, myself, where I'm just literally doing a video on a squirrel walking across the fence eating the seeds that I put down. They wish that they could not give a shit and just enjoy the most simplest stuff like that, rather than chasing their happiness, which they think is in materialism or a job or attracting a certain person. And it triggers off their own unhappiness, I think, which is fine, but it's more becoming aware of that, and nothing else matters apart from how you feel, and whatever you have to do to get to that point, that is fine. It's your own individual experience. Do whatever you've got to do. Singing in front of the mirror, it might be horrific, doesn't matter. If you feel great singing in front of the mirror, that's what matters. Yes, if you want to be a record artist and you're shit, then and you want to be a singer, then you're gonna have to face reality at some point. But apart from that, if it makes you feel good singing shit, sing.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. But I also think it's important to share from a place of really being heard and seen and witnessed. Because when you share all those things to really be witnessing your authentic self, you can have a really huge impact on other people. And sometimes we kind of express ourselves in our bedroom, in our little shells, because it's safe, because we are protected, because nobody's gonna judge it, nobody's gonna anything, like we remain protected in our little shell. But from my own experience, self-exposure has been the most healing thing, and it's been super gratifying to really put myself out there and expose whatever I have to share with people.
So I like singing, and it's something that I want to do professionally at some point. I know I can sing, but I've never really done it properly in front of people. And what I always think is that you only need to post stuff that is perfected. Otherwise, people will be like, oh, you went off there. Oh, you can't sing. So what I've done recently is when I'm driving, I'm just recording myself singing. And it's all over the place. You might get some great parts, you might get some really off parts. But that's not the point. Imagine I was at home with friends or a partner and I was singing. Well, I'm vulnerable at that point because you're my friends and I know you're not judging me, or you're my partner and you're not judging me. So if I can be vulnerable and just sing good and bad for that moment, why would I not post that online to people that follow me? They want to follow me. So therefore, if they're following me, they're probably in my life already and likely to be with me in person from time to time. And if I was like that in person, what difference is it if they see me online? Now, obviously, it's different if it's strangers following you, but why would you care what a stranger thinks? You don't know them. It's like that stranger is a tree or a squirrel. what's important is what your friends think about you. And if they're your friends, you're probably all singing and fucking around together. You're all acting like an idiot, singing around, like just being immature people, fighting or whatever. So when you break it down, it's why would somebody be ashamed or embarrassed or scared to put singing online that they're in the van that is vulnerable because no one's there and they're going off or on, if you know, why is it any different? And the answer is it's no different. It's just how you see it. Because when you're in that van, you were by yourself and you were just singing like no one is listening. So you weren't perfected because you were being watched. But then by putting it online, it's suddenly different. It is no different. But by putting it online, you break down that feeling of, as you say, nervousness and being judged. Because once like you're exposed, there's nothing else. There's nothing else. Now you can do it forever. You've broken that barrier of, oh, I'm a bit pitchy. It's out there. So now I can sort of post it whenever. And it's just breaking it down and trying to understand in your mind what you're actually scared about. And it's just that we've not joined the dots. There's nothing to be scared about.
Yeah, I really like that perspective. I wish I had that perspective when I started singing in front of people. Because when I started, it was the most scary thing in the world, and it still is. The journey that I've had through healing my voice has reflected by really exposing myself in front of people. Massive breakthrough and trauma release when I was singing in public for this Venezuelan protest that was happening in Bristol a few weeks ago. And I just couldn't sing because my voice got really, really blocked because of the emotion that I had. The protest brought up these emotions in me that were like this grief and sadness for not being able to be in my country, and yeah, for just having to protest in a foreign country for the freedom of my own country. So I couldn't really sing, and my voice got blocked, and I cried. I had to step out of the stage that we set up, and I cried in front of people, and I kind of like that was the most. I think that's the fear that I've always had, you know, like being in front of an audience and completely breaking down. And that day it happened. But because of it happened, I kind of got some sort of release and liberation that I hadn't had before. So now when I sing in front of people, I feel like I don't have anything else to lose because I have been in the most vulnerable place already in front of the people, you know, that is from my land. Of showing myself too. So it has already happened. So I have nothing else to lose. I just do it. And I will keep doing it, no matter how vulnerable it is.
Yeah, exactly. So when you've gone, like the worst thing that could happen has happened. So now it's just downhill from there. So I always think that whenever I cry, or say cry in front of people, if I do breath work or whatever, right? I never wipe my tears because for me, wiping your tears shows that you're trying to hide the emotion, which means you're running from a feeling or emotion. And the whole point of crying is you're processing a feeling. So if I cry, I almost want everyone to see that I'm crying, right? So it's almost like taking the thing that most people fear, which is crying, and somebody's saying, "Don't cry, mate. Like it's all like wipe your eyes." It's like, why would you say that? And that's because it triggers off your own pain that you're not releasing. So you don't want to see them crying because then you realize, fuck, I've got a lot of pain too. So therefore, the opposite is that when you cry, you invite others in. Crying is vulnerability. When vulnerability is shown, other people feel vulnerable too. And you create a bonding experience and a closeness with these people that you wouldn't get unless you're vulnerable. So when I cry, say in breath work, I don't wipe my eyes. I want people to see that I am being reborn. I'm being rebuilt. It is not a weakness. It is a power, because the more you cry, the more emotion you let out, the more powerful you become within. So therefore, if you want to become powerful within, cry. First step is letting people see that, because if you are scared, what you're saying is that it is wrong and other people aren't also crying, which is nonsense. Everyone is crying, wants to cry, is so desperate to cry, but they can't because of this perceived weakness. So get it out, let other people see that it's okay. Hopefully they'll cry. And then you raise each other's vibration up together by showing that we're all getting to the same place, which is becoming whole and releasing past trauma. That's it.
Mm-mm. Yeah, totally. I portrayed it being this strong woman that I could hold anything. You know, I could hold the weight of the world in my shoulders, and I could just hold any emotions within me. And definitely cried in front of people. I've done it without really shying away from it, but also like when I do it, I notice that I feel very exposed, and it's something that I still find challenging, you know, to show to people that, oh, I'm in this vulnerable place, and being held and supported by others is something that I have learned to receive, because it hasn't been easy for me to receive that.
Yeah. So what I've learned is that with any fear we have is mostly just the feeling or the thought of that specific thing that gives us fear. And no matter what it is, talking to a person that you like, singing, asking your job for a pay rise, asking your boss for a pay rise, asking the waiter that the steak's burnt and you might have to cook it again. All of this is about avoiding that confrontation of that thing that we want. So facing every single fear for me allowed me to get past all fear. Asking that
Mm,
waitress that I paid 15 quid for to cook my steak again, because I paid 15 quid for this. Asking a woman to, go out for a date when I might have thought from the past they wouldn't be interested. Asking that boss for a pay rise and then asking him again the week later for another pay rise, even though he's probably going to say no. That's not the point. The point is that I am breaking down the fear barriers of what I don't want to do and doing it anyway, and then building the muscle for if I need to do this again, I've got the skills. Or you take these skills into other parts of your life, such as
mm,
if you can ask a girl out on a date, then you probably will have no problem asking your boss for a pay rise, because it's all about wanting something and then holding back because you're scared of rejection or resistance or not
mm,
being heard. And it all comes down to just not being able to cope with the feeling that you will feel if you do these things that you're scared of. And just facing any fear allows you to come out the end. And it might take a few attempts of asking the same or more women numbers. It might take a few attempts of singing on stage. It might take a few attempts of asking boss number one 4 times for a pay rise. But then the next job you have, asking the boss, should be easier, to the point where you don't really need to ask women on dates anymore or ask your boss for a pay rise, because you can just do it. Like, and it's just, there's no resistance. So you can just, I can ask her whenever. I can ask that guy on a date whenever. Do you know what? I know I can ask the chef to cook my steak again, but he's having a shitty day. I'll just eat it. And you
mm.
can choose rather than really wanting to and then not being able to.
Yeah, and it also comes back its desires and boundaries. You know, it's not just asking for things that you want or things that you want to manifest, but also really expressing, oh, I need this. There's a deep need for this communication to improve, or there's a deep need for something to change in my life. Or actually, you know what? I don't like how this conversation is going. Let's just have a step back and have some space. Or I feel like what you're saying is draining me. Let's have some space from the I'm not really comfortable with it, or whatever, or simply expressing a desire of like, I would like to be touched like this, or I would like if we go on a date this day, or I would like it if we do something, or any type of desire. Just expressing all of that, requires this empowerment with the voice, and also, yeah, facing fears of rejection. But I think pain that comes with that rejection, because sometimes, people is allowed to say no, and people will not always fulfill your needs, desires, and don't will always respect your boundaries. So it's always allowing yourself to really feel the rejection and to feel the pain that comes with that. And once you allow yourself to really feel that pain, then you can evolve into really being fearless of expressing yourself.
Yeah, so I did a thing called conscious connections on the weekend where you're in a group full of people, strangers, and you walk around and then you just sort of look to the person that's next to you and you just hold eye contact and you just stare at each other and you let whatever comes to you comes to you. And one of the tasks that we did was we would say what comes to our mind. And I was saying that I saw this person with rings on his hand and I said, I am observing that you've got rings on your hand and that you might have gone for medicine because I also got rings from medicine. And you have a earring and a nose septum piercing, which is uncommon for guys to have. And then he responded how it made him feel by me saying what I said. And then he said, I am aware that I don't like the fact that you were judging me based on my materialistic traits rather than getting to know me. So what he was saying is that he wants people to get to know him as a human, as a person, and not judge him based on what they see. And when he said that, I felt the energy. I felt like the importance of his words when he says that. Yes, I may wear rings, but get to know me, meaning he probably doesn't feel heard. I felt it. And then I felt that nervousness, energy, and I like to embrace it. And I said, I now feel, based on what you've just said, this nervous tension, suppressed kind of almost anger energy of not being heard growing up. And I'm aware that I didn't like that feeling because I'm always about positive energy and high vibes all the time. And if there's negative energy anywhere, I'm not even there. But sitting in front of him and not being on the same page for that split second versus always on the same page, it's black and white. And one of the exercises we did was imagine food that you love. That's a feeling of a yes. Imagine something you hate. That's a feeling of a no. So when somebody says you want to do something and you say yes with your mouth, does it feel like how it feels when you imagine a favorite food? Going into the boundaries thing, being able to understand when you say no, do you deep down want to say yes, or does your body really mean no? And vice versa with a yes. Are you saying yes because you feel pressured, or do you actually feel yes? And I learned from that situation that I don't like not being on the same page as people. So in life, you can choose to talk about politics and not be on the same page. If you like debating, great. Or you can talk about all this type of shit, right? Where you're talking about the same things and power of vulnerability and crying, and you feel good, you feel whole. And to your point about we're not always going to be on the same page with people, and it's how we tolerate and accept that energy where you're not on the same page or that nervousness or whatever, because that's part of life. And learning to just embrace it rather than trying to run around it. It's part of life. And I learned I can't always be on the same page as everybody. And I've got to sit in situations where we're not on the same page. And that's fine because that is life. 50% of life is that.
Mm. Yeah, and agreeing to disagree, to have different opinions, and respect that sometimes people are not gonna agree with what you think, the way that you perceive life, because we all have different experiences, and sometimes the experience that we have conditioned us to perceive and act towards life in a different way that another person would do. We will be conditioned to take different choices, to take different paths, to take different avenues and solutions for our problems. So yeah, it's okay. It's a matter of agreeing to disagree, and really expressing that as well. You can just express, okay, well, I don't, and your opinion is valid, I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing it. But maybe we part ways in this opinion because there's no conciliation. So all of that is part of the voice, and feeling free to express the voice.
So I find that there's always going to be common ground with people. Different people will have certain things that you all have in common. And I think, why would you speak about something you don't have in common when you can speak about stuff that you all have in common? Because no one's exactly the same. Everyone's going to have different opinion with everything, right? Not eating meat, religion, politics, you know, refugee stuff. There's so many things that people are going to disagree with. So I think if you're with somebody in that present moment, get on the same page as them. Because if you have a belief that isn't the same as theirs, your belief is still your belief. Unless you want to learn about differences of opinions, go and share that with somebody who also agrees the same, rather than saying it to somebody who doesn't, and then not being able to enjoy that moment on the same wavelength. It's like, if you like football, you go to a match with other football fans. You're not going to go to a rugby match as a football fan expecting them to have the same enjoyment in football as you do. So there's a time and a place for learning different opinions and having debates if you enjoy the debate process and you enjoy learning different opinions. But for the most of life, in this short time that we're here, get on the same page as people versus not, for the sake of being heard, getting out your opinion, because you can do that anywhere with other people who are on the same page as you. Well, actually, you get out how you feel, and you don't feel shitty because they agree with you. But it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's just they agree with you. You've got it out your system. But when you're with this person, we're going to be on the same page about this shit, unless I want to debate and have that confrontation, which is a whole new skill set.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can see to play devil's advocate in many conversations. So, or sometimes if a person is giving me a point of view, even if I agree with that, I sometimes have the tendency to, give another perspective, just for the expansion of the mind and for the expansion of the conversation itself. Because sometimes agreeing with something or having or sharing common interest with someone is not that fun. I mean, you know what I mean? Like having differences and really confronting someone's belief system can be a really fun way to engage.
Yeah, and also if they're not ready or willing to engage or change their mindset or be challenged, then they might not simply want to be in your company. So if you had so many things in common, but for that one specific thing, such as, you know, they're not speaking to their parent because they fell out 5 years ago, and I'm like, you really should speak to your dad because life's short. You don't know what's going to happen. You agree with everything. But that thing that you've just said about the parent is so raw that could mean they don't want to speak to you again, almost because they're vulnerable, because you've seen them, you know them, it's true. How they react is a confirmation. So now whenever they come back in your space, they know that you're running from a parent situation, and it's uncomfortable for people to feel like they are open or vulnerable or seen if they are trying to hide from something, which goes back to the point of, it's probably because I don't like that confrontation myself, because I like to always be happy and joyful and make everyone laugh and blah, 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 blah. And rather than not being on the same page where you're laughing, I'd rather laugh, and I accept that you could have millions of things that we aren't the same as, but for this very moment, I'm going to enjoy making you laugh, and I am happy and enjoying making you laugh, which goes back to the videos that I used to do. It's now not about anybody else. Is this making me feel the best that I can now? Can I make myself feel great making you laugh now, even though we don't have the same political views and religious views, and you're vegan and I'm not? And to me, that is more important in that moment. If my mission in my moment is to be present and feel the best that I can in any given moment.
Hmm. Yeah, life is not always laughter, though, and sometimes expressing raw emotions and being triggered by different conversations is also part of life, and I think it's also part of growth. So I think it's positive, that sometimes we get triggered by other people's disagreements or by other people's confrontations, or triggering someone by really confronting them with a difference, because that's where growth happens and where understanding can be built and deepen. I had this situation the other day where I had this conversation, and I played the devil's advocate with this friend that we were having a conversation, and I kind of challenged him on his perspective on a specific topic. And after some back and forth with this, I came from a place of vulnerability and say, "Look, I'm sharing this. I've been that person that has been in that situation, and and when I show him my experience and my point of view, he could really see a different perspective and get out of his box mind frame where he was convinced that his point of view was the only thing. So I think sometimes confrontation can be positive if you are doing it in a way that is not aggressive, violent, or where you are just really aiming to change someone's mind. You can just grow by expanding your perspective on something. If you share it from a personal experience, at the end of the day, our own opinions come from our own experience. And I think it's a matter of not generalizing, but really having an I statement from everything that you think is your personal truth. If you share it from I have experienced this, and for me this is what has worked, it changes completely the confrontation aspect of it. And you just come from a place of vulnerability where you are inviting the other person into your world, and inviting them to have empathy towards that topic just by coming from a personal place.
Yeah, so um, it's almost like using psychology, right? So it's like, well, if I want you to listen to me, how am I going to do that? Well, flip it. What do you want? You want to be heard. Okay. So if you want to be heard, you'll also respect that I want to be heard. Okay. So I'm going to share my own experience, which we both agree is just my own experience. It's not right or wrong. And we also know that you might learn something from my experience. So I'm going to speak about my experience. And that's all it is, my experience. You may learn something or not, versus telling people what you think they should do, which, as we know, is not possible because what they would do is unique to their experience and their situation. And there's so many variables that could happen for both people that what you're saying might not have any relevance to them when it happens. So using that psychology of how to get something across, which you may or may not think is the right decision, right? By the collective majority, or just by your own ego that you think's right until you're proven wrong. You're right. The only way to do it is just say, this is just my opinion. Hopefully you can learn, share it. And hopefully if there's something to learn, that they will. And I know that when there is a lesson to learn for me, it always comes at the right time where somebody will say something to me. And because I'm unconsciously waiting for this lesson, I will then submit, step back, engage. They will continue talking. They will see that I'm listening, and they will keep listening, and they will deliver the message. And I will learn very quickly what that person is here to teach me. Versus, oh, I don't like this energy. Let's talk about something we have in common. So when these lessons do come, I hear it and it is uncomfortable, but because I was unconsciously expecting it to happen, I'm in it, my tail's in between my legs, and I learn. Versus unsolicited advice, where we can choose to speak about football or we can choose to speak about why animals shouldn't be eaten. It's like, okay, well, I'm not here to learn that lesson, right? Because I like meat. Let's speak about football. But yeah, advice comes when it is needed, and learning to listen to it is the most important thing when it comes.
Mm. Yeah. And to me, it's also important to have conversations that are real and that have depth in it. Because when you just stay in the superficiality of things to know someone, and you just stay in the surface level just because you want to feel safe, to not go into that level of vulnerability of sharing your own emotions, your own experiences, or being triggered, or all of that. I personally don't find that any enriching. I don't find it challenging to grow. I don't find it engaging. So I cannot follow through with conversations that stay on the surface level. I really have to go deep, establish a friendship with someone. If there's some depth in the conversation, and if I see that the person, they have certain limitations in their beliefs and they have judgments, but they are also open to be challenged into those judgments and to changing those limiting beliefs and into learning from a different perspective. Because at the end of the day, that's all we have in different at the same time common is the perspective that we see life, the lens that we see life through, and just being open to see through other people's lenses and go beyond the judgments and the limitations that we create for ourselves is what can bridge communication and what can also really challenging yourself into going beyond the surface level of things. Because if you stay in the surface level conversation where you just talk about the weather and the mundane things that you're gonna do with your day or your weekend or plans or things like that, there's no growth. There's just passing the time. And to me, I don't find that engaging anymore.
Listen, I love learning and I love being challenged and I love being told that I'm wrong. And then I instantly am like, why am I wrong? I want to understand why I'm wrong. Because if I am, I will find the way to be right. And if I'm not challenged, then I still believe that my narrative is correct. And I don't want to have a narrative based on incorrectness or not truth. If I'm going to have an opinion, I want it to be true. So challenge me, press me. It's what the press is all about. You press politicians so they question their own belief systems. That's what their job is. Press me. If you're working for me, like I want to make sure you know exactly what you're doing. So I personally love being challenged. And as soon as somebody is challenging me, I step back and I go, okay, there's a lesson to be learned here. And I will keep asking why until I understand why. And if at the end of all my questions, sometimes I might change my narrative and I'll thank them for the lesson. I'm grateful. Sometimes I become aware that, okay, I get what they're getting at. Okay. They're pushing their agenda. I see their agenda. I get the lesson, but I don't need to be changed here because I know it, but I know what you're trying to do. And I'm seeing it from his point of view. And there's no lesson to be learned, in which case you'll continue listening in hope he might get to a point where there's a lesson to be learned and I might change my mind. Or it then becomes simply about observing you in this moment, still giving that person time so they are heard. And actually, the lesson isn't for me to change, it's for you to be heard in this moment. And I'm giving you that gift by you being heard. And then eventually you might go back and be like, what I learned from talking is that actually what I thought was right is wrong. Just by giving them that time and not saying, oh, I think you're wrong. Nope, I disagree. Nope, you're wrong. or just being like, mate, I don't talk about this bullshit. Can we talk about football? It goes both ways, you know. I suddenly check myself that, this isn't a lesson for me. This is your lesson. And my job is just to witness you going through your lesson. So sometimes that is very interesting. Don't know if you've had that before.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. I think sharing your life story is what can show the people the lessons that you've been through, and by being hurt in that situation is how we can learn from each other. What do you find challenging in communication? You said that you like being challenged. So what is something that
I like it when, say, I'm just talking like this and somebody pushes back and says, I see where you're coming from, but I disagree, and here's why. And now I'm now learning from you. I might not learn anything, but I'm willing for you to change my mind. I love being wrong because it puts my ego in check, and I love that. It's very important to have people to put your ego in check. Otherwise, you just live on another planet, and it's not good. So if somebody's challenging me, I want to be convinced otherwise that I'm wrong because I love being right. So in order to be right, you've got to be wrong so many times that you change that narrative to be right based on a fact or what the collective majority think. And so, yeah, that's it. Just having somebody say, here's why I disagree, and then me listening and trying to find reasons to also agree that actually I am wrong. And then quickly flipping it round and going, yep, I'm wrong. You're absolutely right. And I'm going to take that on board and implement that in my life as we move forward. And there's nothing more humbling when you are basically broken, where you thought something was something and you're wrong. There's nothing more humbling. It's not embarrassing, it's really humbling, where you can essentially be told that that dog is not actually a dog, it's a cat. And you're like, oh my God, I was a fucking idiot. What was I thinking? Of course it's a cat. It's meowing. And then you, you put your ego in check and you feel good that you can put your ego in check because not many people can.
hmm, and and how much people have worked on their arrogance, because if you are not emotionally mature, and you are a very arrogant person, somebody challenge your beliefs and putting your ego in check can result in defensiveness,
Yes.
and that person like reacting to whatever you're saying with defensiveness and just creating conflict, and then person is defending their point of view to a point where they are not accepting there's a different point of view valid as well as theirs. So I think this is important to have a lot of work, emotional maturity to be able to be self-reflective and to say, I'm gonna put my ego in check. I'm gonna put my ego in check here, and yeah, let's accept this opinion as valid, and I'm gonna reflect on this and if you don't have that level of work and emotional maturity, it's really difficult to communicate with certain people that really just don't see beyond their own belief systems and don't accept other people's opinions as valid as well. So it all comes down to how much work you've done on yourself and how much you can accept differences.
Right, let's send that there. Anything you want to promote or plug?
Yes. I'm gonna perform. There's a gig going on in Bristol City Farm, the Bridge Farm, where Vegan Queen V and Illumin are releasing their albums. So I will be supporting the sound healing on Sunday the 27th from 2 till 7, and then on Sunday this was on Sunday the 20th, and on Sunday the 27th there's a performance in Bristol Mayor's Chapel where a lot of women are gathering together to embrace the feminine energy, and we're gonna be doing song weaving, sharing my songs and my music in that day. So this will be on Bristol Lord's Chapel on the Sunday the 27th.
And if you had one day left to live, what's the one thing that you would tell the rest of the world?
Can you repeat that?
If you had one day left to live, what is the one thing you would share to the rest of the world?
The most important thing in this life is for your soul to express. So seek whatever you can to light up your creativity and to express it.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please remember to subscribe, turn the bell notifications on, like the episode, and comment below. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's YesKingOliver. Take a look at the other videos to your side. And if you just want to listen to this podcast, you can do so on Apple and Spotify and most other platforms by going to talkwitholiver.com.